from last week being at SEC Media Days, then coming here for Coaches School, it's just kind of like the kickoff to the season for us. So it's always exciting to see a lot of familiar faces now, 5 years into this, and the coaches that had great years last year, their teams had great years getting recognized by the Texas High School Coaches Association for all the work that they had, success they had last year. Obviously, everybody here is excited about their upcoming seasons. A lot of great coaches, a lot of great teams, and it's a really cool opportunity to be together with all of the head coaches from the other universities in the state of Texas, and because we've all got a part to what makes football so special in our state. And so it's always an honor and a privilege to be here to represent the University of Texas. And but like I said, this is always kind of to me like the kickoff. We're about to get started now, which is obviously exciting.
Mike Craven, Dave Campbell's Texas Football. 20 commitments right now, 10 of them from Texas. I know you've talked about recruiting becoming more and more national. How do you kind of balance your locality and building a team and then the relationships kind of in this building right now with how you go about recruiting?
Yeah, it's always a challenge. I was just looking at something here. We've had 23 draft picks the last 2 years, which is the most in the country. And we had 11 2 years ago and 12 this year. Of those 23 players drafted, 19 of those players are from the state of Texas. We had 9 2 years ago get drafted from the state of Texas, and we had 10 this year get drafted from the state of Texas. So this is vitally important for us and our ability to recruit our state. But like anything, I think one of the challenges is where do you draw the line, the fine line of we have to make sure that we're recruiting a roster that can compete for national championships. But at the same token, make sure that we're continually recruiting the best players in the state of Texas, and we don't get to sign them all. And there's a lot of really good schools in our own state, and I've touched on this numerous times. I think as much as people view us and maybe some other schools in our state for recruiting out of the state, I think a lot of schools are recruiting in our state as well, and a lot of players are a lot more apt to leave the state. And it's going to be something I talk about here today that I think we all. And I'm going to praise all the programs because really what Coach Elko is doing at A&M, what Rhett has been doing at SMU, the commitment, obviously, what Joey is doing at Tech, what Dave Aranda has been doing at Baylor, the track record of Willie, of the success he's had. Houston's going to get going. There's so many great programs in our state. I don't know that kids need to leave, but I do think that kids need guidance of why they should stay, and there's a lot of advantages to that, which I won't get into. But our boat's not different than most. At the end of the day, our job is to recruit the best roster that we can, the character of kids with the talent that they have that put us in a really good position to compete and to compete for championships. And so I would love not to have to leave our state, but inevitably, history tells me we're not going to sign all the best players every year from the state of Texas. Some are going to go to other schools within our state. Some are going to leave. And at that point, we then have to go, kind of find them in other places. And to think that, I think few years ago, we were playing from behind with that mindset. We've shifted our focus a little bit to be a little bit more aggressive. But that's just the reality of the state of recruiting right now. I wish we could corral it a little bit better than we have. And that's going to be a goal of mine over the next 12 to 24 months as we continue to, we've always had short-term goals, but long-term goals. How do we corral the state better than we have? And I don't think it's just the University of Texas. I think it's all the schools involved to make that happen. I think there's a responsibility on our end. I think there's a responsibility from the high school coaches to do that. Because I think we would all love for the players that play high school football in the state of Texas to go to one of our schools. And to have success and to compete for championships and to graduate from college and to get drafted into the NFL. And so I do think that we're putting a product on the field that models that, and we have numbers to back that up, but now we've got to recruit that way as well.
Hey, Steve. Kirk Bowles, Houston Chronicle. As you get ready to report in a week or so, does this season coming up feel any different, than the last few? And would you prefer to be ranked number one, or would you rather not be?
I don't really care about the rankings. Truth be told, I've sat up here and said the rankings don't matter when we weren't ranked very highly, and I don't think that's going to change if we are ranked higher. Preseason rankings are great, and I say it, they're great for the fans and they're great for the popularity of our sport. It keeps the conversation of college football on the forefront of people's minds and the media and things of that nature, right? And I think that that's awesome for our sport, and that the fact that we're talking about week one matchups and all those things, but in reality they don't matter. What we do on the field, the way we perform, is going to be ultimately what dictates how our season goes, and so that part doesn't hit me too much that way. I'm excited about this season. And it is a little bit different because the reality of it is I think I have one player left on our roster that was 5-7, and that's Michael Taff. And the majority of the players on our roster, the big bulk of the players on our roster, don't know anything but playing in conference championship games, going to the college football playoff, and playing in the semifinals. And so different challenges, right, where early in our years, we were trying to convince our guys that we were worthy of winning, and the work that we've put in. Now it's making sure that we've got the right mindset going into a season, and reminding them of where we've come and how far we've come from where we were, but not making them feel bad about where we're at today, because there's been a lot of hard work and time and effort put into this on the coach's part, on their part, and the administration's part to get us to this point. But it's an exciting time. I like our team. I like the hunger of this team. I like the energy. It's youthful. They're connected, and that part's always fun for me when you get ready to go to training camp.
Yeah, Jeff Howe on Texas Football. Sark, I was just wondering if you comment on the uniqueness of not having a game before the big non-conference game against Ohio State, and for you, from whether it's camp structure, game planning, getting ready for that big one right out of the gate, on top of the fact that that's the last team you played, just the uniqueness of the opener this year.
Yeah, I've been down this road a couple different times throughout my career. This is probably the most daunting challenge of a first game, because some of those games were neutral sites type games. Really early in my career, way back in 2003. We opened at Auburn when I was at SC, and that was a heck of a challenge. We had a new quarterback, Matt Leinart, and we had a couple freshman running backs, Reggie Bush, Lendell White. Like, we were a young team, and we had a great defense that year, and found a way to win on the road against might have been preseason number one team in the country at the time in Auburn. And so you just try to tap into kind of those things throughout your career that you've been through, and then how can you benefit from that? For us, historically, what we've done, and I don't mind getting into this, the first 2.5 weeks or so of training camp have been truly that of training camp. And then we've adjusted kind of into that third week of where we've gotten into that first opponent, that bigger opponent. So a few years ago, it was Alabama for that week. Last year it was Michigan. This year would be Ohio State. And that was really implementing the game plan for that game. And then the fourth week, we would then game plan and prepare for our first opponent. Where this year, what it will look like more of kind of a 2-week process to get ready for the game. Similar in a sense, I guess you could say it almost to a bowl game. But yet the reality of it is probably a little more physicality, a little more opportunity to tackle and to do those things to make sure that you're sharp. That's always right. What are your biggest concerns going into a game? Your first game is A, tackling, that you make sure you can get people on the ground. B, ball security, that your ball carriers are used to being tackled, all right, so you're not giving up short fields. And then 3, dealing with performance anxiety, for some of the players who it's their first time on that stage, that they're ready to perform. And so if I can put them in some of those elements, as well as, the staff putting together a good game plan, and then we can get up there and go cut it loose and go play.
Isaac Edwards for Texas Football Live. I know you kind of tapered expectations at the very beginning about not landing every big recruit out of Texas, but thinking about your tenure, Quinn Ewers, Colin Simmons, Jermaine Bishop, now the number one athlete in the country, what has kind of been like y'all's keys to success to have landing all that talent?
I think one with that is, when you turn on the tape for those caliber of players and a lot of other players that we didn't get, the tape generally doesn't lie. Good players are good players. That's easy to see. And then you start to forge the relationships, whether it's with myself, the position coach, the recruiting area coach, our recruiting department, which does a fantastic job of identifying players and developing those relationships. And then all the while respecting the fact that other universities are doing the same thing, right? And not being so arrogant to think that you're the only ones doing it that way. And then over time, is it the right fit? I think ultimately the fit matters too, of timing, Quinn, was obviously a transfer, but we were in pretty desperate need of a quarterback at that time. It was the right timing. It was the right fit for him. Colin was a need and a fit in a sense of, I don't know how many times other people sitting in front of you asked me about our pass rush, right? And then so where were we going to get a pass rush from? And so the idea that we were able to call and fit at the right time. Hey, we try to identify really good players who are really good people that fit our program, that fit our culture, put our best foot forward, and you win some and you lose some. Ultimately you try to finish on top the right way. And then when it's all done and you look at your signing class, did it fit the needs that you had? Okay, are we going to be a better team down the road because of the class we signed? Are there still some holes on our roster that maybe we then have to go into the portal for? And so, we just don't, and that's no offense to anybody here that's involved in ranking players. We just don't chase stars. It's not about who's a 4-star and who's a 5-star in the state of Texas and offer them all. Are they a fit for what we need on the field? Are they a fit for who we are off the field? And that's not a knock on anybody, but sometimes they may fit better somewhere else, and that's okay too. But we just try to trust our evaluation and forge relationships and see if it's good enough.
Hey, Steve, Alex Miller from the Bryan College Station Eagle. Just along the lines of recruiting in state, Texas and A&M have long recruited against each other, but I'm just curious, just from your perspective, have the dynamics changed at all since you guys have been in the SEC?
I really don't think so. There was obviously some battles from the very beginning, and they've got a really good program and historically have recruited very well for a long time. And it always felt like early on we were kind of playing a little bit of catch up, quite frankly. That they were kind of ahead of the game and they were a little more established with the previous staff, and we were trying to get our footing on the ground, and we didn't have a great first year, but we won a couple critical battles along the way that I think helped us, and now at the end of the day, hey, we're both in the Southeastern Conference. It's, in my opinion, the best conference in college football. And so it attracts a lot of high quality players, whether it's in state or out of state. And ironically, assessing what they've done historically, they've gone out of state some too. And you could probably ask Coach Elko. I'm sure we would all prefer not to have to get on an airplane, but the reality of it is that's just the nature of the beast that we're in, So, but they do a heck of a job, and we're all recruiting those high level players that are good people. And, like I said, some are going to come here, some are going to go there. That's just kind of the way it goes.
Greg World of the Dallas Morning News. THSCA said earlier today a problem they see with recruiting is the fact that colleges are now dealing with agents instead of high school coaches. What can be done about that? And also with agents now involved in revenue share contracts being so prevalent now, are we going to start seeing more multi-year, fully guaranteed contracts given to these high school kids?
Okay, some layers to this. Okay, so I think the first part, ideally, I would love to deal with high school coaches more. And I think there's a responsibility of the high school coaches to not just fall prey to, well, now there's money and there's agents and my role's been diminished. I think they need to be bullish to not let their role be diminished. And we would prefer that, quite frankly. Agents are going to be a part of this, and let's not act like they're not. They are, but I think there can be a working relationship for the best interests of the players and the student athletes that we are recruiting, and so I do think that that's important. But I just think we need to be cautious not to throw our hands in the air and say, well, the agents are doing it now and my role's been diminished. I think high school coaches have had such an impact on student athletes for so long that now's not the time to not be bullish, to remain a part of their lives, especially in one of the biggest decision of their lives that they're getting ready to make. So that's the first part. The second question, just give it to me one more time, because I want to make sure I answer it the right way.
Do you think we're going to start seeing colleges have to offer multi-year?
Okay. So here's my opinion, and I don't know what's going to happen. I don't pretend to know. But let's paint a picture. We sign a young man to a 3-year contract. That should mean, in my opinion, if he's on a 3-year guaranteed contract, that he has to stay at my university for 3 years. The problem I have with that is at the end of year 1, if Billy doesn't like the way it's going, he's a free agent and he can go in the portal and leave. That doesn't make sense to me. That's not good. That's not a good business model. Okay, so where does it go from here? I don't know. I'm not the decision maker on this, so I'm not going to pretend to have the answers to it. But I will say that doesn't make sense to me, right? If I sign a multi-year deal, which I have one, and I decided to leave, which I'm not, I would have to pay the University of Texas to leave. Well, until we institute things like that, then I don't understand that why we should feel like we have to sign multi-year deals if at the discretion of the student can leave whenever they want. They're a free agent to leave when they want. So is the system perfect? No. Are we trying to get better at cleaning it up to making it better for all parties involved? I do think we are, yes. But we're definitely a work in progress right now.
Shahan J. Roger from CBS Sports. Coach, I'm curious, you obviously have a few former Texas high school coaches on your staff, lots of people with Texas ties. I'm curious, in the age of revenue sharing and money, what does it actually mean, and how important is it, I guess, the mechanics of building relationships in terms of recruiting and development?
Well, I think it's hugely important. We've got a couple former coaches on staff, in Chris Gilbert and Jamal Fenner, who are both tremendous high school coaches in the state of Texas, that have forged great relationships not only with the high school coaches in the state, but the student athletes. The connections that they have, maybe through third parties, so on and so forth. And so those things are immensely important to us. And to think that is going to go away, I think we would be remiss. And I know a lot of coaches want to get up here and sing the blues to you and say everything's just transactional now and it's this and it's that. I don't believe that. And I just don't believe that, because I know the roster that we have on our team. I know the relationships we have with the players on our team. Is there a business aspect now, a component that has been built in? Sure there is. But coaches are under contracts, and we've got great relationships, and so we can still have really good relationships and there still be a business component to what we do. And if those relationships do matter, then individuals like that, or whether it's Brandon Harris, our general manager, or John Michael Jones, and all that in that department are critical for our success in forging those relationships. Because if it was all just about money, then yeah, I might sign a decent class, but they're not made of the right stuff that what I'm looking for. It might be better somewhere else. And so I just think that it's, we'd be remiss to push that to the side and say it's all transactional, because at that point, now we're just accumulating talented people and we're not really forming a really good team. And teams win championships. We don't play tennis. We don't play golf. We play football. It's a team sport, and we've got to build teams year after year.
Matt Royden, News 4 Fox SA here in San Antonio. I wanted to ask you about two local guys that are on the Texas roster. Trey Moore, obviously, was huge at UTSA, came up to you guys, had a good season last year. What's the ceiling for him? And then I also wanted to ask about Michael Terry, a freshman that you guys picked up at Alamo Heights. Is he someone that you see making an impact right away, or more of a longer vision for?
Yeah, I'll touch on Trey Moore first. Was a great addition for us last year. Brought a really steady veteran mindset and approach to what he does. Got great work ethic. I really thought Trey came on the second half of last season. You could feel his presence, especially on third down, especially against really quality opponents that we were playing. You really feel his presence. We're trying to utilize his versatility a little bit more this year than we did a year ago, and he provides some position flexibility for us. So, last year was primarily playing edge and a little outside linebacker. We're now leading with him playing linebacker that can offset and be a DPR, designated pass rusher for us. And so his versatility is going to be big for us. I think he's poised for a great season. I think he's had a great offseason. I was just talking to Coach Becton about him yesterday, as a matter of fact, that what a difference from one year to the next has made for Trey Moore being in the program, and how good of a summer he's had, which I think is setting up for a heck of a season for him this fall. Michael Terry is a ridiculous athlete. A guy who did everything in high school, from wildcat quarterback to running back to receiver, to even times looking like a tight end. And so what we've tried to do with Michael here through spring and through summer is let him hone in on one thing. And so we've really got him honed in at receiver right now. And you see real flashes of the physical ability that he has. But it's like anything, when you're a jack of all trades, which he was in high school, we're trying to get him to be a master of one first. And then once he can master that or come close to, then we can start to let him to spread his wings to do more things for us. Time will tell the impact that it'll have for us this fall. But from where he was day one of spring ball to where he is at this middle of July, this summer, the amount of improvement he's made. I mean, I think probably last what day was that? Probably last Thursday was probably one of his best days that I've seen him just feeling comfortable playing the position and it be looking natural to him. And so, he's going to catch on quickly because he's such a gifted athlete, but I think time will tell of the impact that'll have for us this fall.
Coach, David with High School Sports Magazine. Nice to see you again. On a final note, I was impacted to see that photo that you had taken of you with those flood victims, watching the floods that took place. Your thoughts, your final thoughts on that, Coach?
Well, first of all, I'm going to lead with this, that clearly, everybody in our organization's thoughts and prayers are with those affected by the floods in Central Texas. What you find out over time, when your initial thought is, wow, that's scary, and then over time you start to find out just how close it hits home. To neighbors who had kids at camps there, to fans and the gentleman who ran Camp Mystic, sat at the 50-yard line at DKR every Saturday, and so just the how close it hits to home and the effect that it can have on so many people, it's scary. And like I told our players, tomorrow's not promised, and so being grateful for what we have every day, being grateful for those people in our lives every day. We need to do that. And because you never know. And, what a tragic event, and one that, obviously we're doing everything in our power that we can to help support that and help support those, who lost things that I can't imagine losing at this juncture in my life. So, like I said, thoughts and prayers with everybody.